what are some of the biggest challenges women veterans are facing right now that people may not fully understand?
Um, so I think that one of the biggest challenges that we face are, just being seen in our own society. And I feel like this is a generational issue when it comes to women veterans because we often aren't viewed as a veteran. And because of
Right.
that, yeah, and because of that, a lot of our, disabilities or issues that we might face, we are quiet about because we are, trying to determine or just trying to figure out where we can actually go to talk about these issues
Mhm.
if we aren't, viewed by society as, a veteran.
I'm going to piggyback on that a little bit because you are what of the millennial era or the late Gen X. So I, in my experience, you've seen the later, the ones that were before our generation, just not being identified at all. You didn't even know they existed until now that people are making movies, spotlighting, bringing them in and having these conversations. And then you get to the Gen X, which is my era, and the millennials, and they're doing a lot more because that generation was able to be more in some of these special forces and do a lot more, and they were in the spotlight. Um, and I don't know too much about the younger generations after this on how they are making their presence known in that space. So, what have you seen that is good and what needs to be changed?
So yes, so we are doing a better job, right? But we still have a
Yeah.
long way to go. So one thing that I can say is, when we speak on like the VA, right? So the VA is, providing a little bit more support tailored to,
Mm-hmm.
women veterans, which helps. Not all
Mm-hmm.
VAs do this, right?
That's true.
So yeah, so I know that when I go to, the Women's Health Center, clinic, whatever they call it at the VA, you know, when I go there, I feel different than when I go to one that's, for everyone, especially
Right.
if, the issues that, just women in general that we go through
Mm-hmm.
having to, talk about this in the open and around,
Mm-hmm.
men and, just it's just a different vibe. So I feel like, that is headed in the right direction.
Right.
We still have a ways to go as far as rolling that out into other areas of the VA because not all clinics have this.
That's very
So
true.
yeah, so I think that is one area that it is becoming stronger, but still needs a little bit of work.
I get
But I
that.
will say, and also like we go through an identity conflict as it is
Mm-hmm.
in the military. And then as a woman veteran, it's even I feel I'm not I can't speak on the men, but I
Yeah.
feel, it could be a little bit more prevalent going through that transition as a woman, where we need a little bit more support
Right.
um
Right.
when going through that transition period.
That makes sense. Yeah, it's been a few years, but here in Texas, I was invited to um, sit down. It was a few women vets that there, and I was there and just sitting and listening because it was like a senator that was focused on veteran issues, but specifically women veteran issues, and the things that came up, I just never thought that that was even possible. Like the main VAs that I've been to, the one that I got my surgery and I had a foot surgery with two surgeries was in Arizona, and now I'm here in Texas. So those are bigger VAs, and through those conversations that the women were having, they they literally were sharing gynecological tools with other VA clinics. They would get them clean. So the hold up for some of these women to get their appointments was the tools had to be cleaned and shipped over to another clinic. And I was like, so,
Mm.
and it's not full time. So the women's needs at most of these hospitals or clinics are not full-time people. So the doctors that care specifically for women were not full-time. And with me being at bigger clinics, I didn't even know that was a thing until I heard it. And I was
That
like,
is the thing.
wow.